Okay, well, thank you for coming to listen. It's been quite a busy year for us at our Car Park Interactive. I stood up this time last year to announce the RX6 computer, which we were demonstrating on the stand 12 months ago. I promised delivery by the year end, stroke turn of the year, and lo and behold, that's what we did. The first machines were shipping out to business customers by the end of 2014, and the first consumer machines shipped out, I think, first week of January to everybody else. Since then, it's been basically a big long treadmill of trying to fulfill the orders, so we've had quite a busy year. But we haven't stopped in terms of development, so the RX6 you see here today is not the RX6 you saw last year. The way we do business is that I only talk about features that we've actually implemented and that are working and that you can take away. So when I showed the computer last year, I showed working SATA, I showed working video, I claimed video up to 1920 by 1200 at 60 Hertz true color, and everybody was thrilled to bits. I showed the gigabit Ethernet, I showed the fast USB, and so on, and lo and behold, it did it all. Over the year, we've been able to expand the capabilities. We've added support for the RS232 serial, and then over the summer, we were able to, at no extra cost, offer people a free upgrade on the video side of things, from not just 1920 by 1200, but right up to so-called 4K. Now 4K is a bit of a buzzword in the TV industry. It relates to screen resolutions of not just 1920 by 1080 or 20 by 1200, but 3840. So that's two 1920s horizontally by 2160, which is two lots of 1080p vertically, equivalent to sort of 4 times the amount of pixels that you have on a 1080p display. We've just rolled that out as a free upgrade to existing customers, and so you can now see, if I bring up the screen mode, here. So I'm doing it over my shoulder, which is a little bit awkward, but you can see that we have, from the most basic screen mode at the top, all the way down to 3840, 2160, 4K. Now this projector won't do that, so I can't really just demonstrate it live. But what you will see on the stand is that we have a superb top-of-the-line screen which was doing the 3440 by 1440. The reason I chose to bring that to demonstrate rather than the full 4K was quite simply that, having tried a selection of monitors on a sort of sale or returney type basis with our supplier, I wasn't that taken with the 4K screens. The reason being is quite simply one of practicality, that 4K, although it's a fantastic buzzword and I love being able to say RX6 does 4K, when you're sat in front of a monitor, you need a monitor that you can actually work with. And the problem with 4K is that if you actually run it at sort of 1-to-1 pixels, where you actually sort of have that huge amount of desktop, you really want a screen that is a minimum of 32, probably closer to 40 inches in size, because otherwise everything gets far too tiny. If you can imagine sort of squeezing 4 times the amount of information into a 24 or a 27 inch even display that you're used to, you can imagine everything gets really, really tiny. So you either need a big whopping display in order to sort of have it at 1-to-1, or you need a 24 inch or similar display and actually just basically have everything zoomed in, sort of doubled up. Now that can actually look absolutely fantastic, because RISC OS has really nice doubling up display that will make the text look mouth-wateringly beautiful. But then the question is, are you really happy to spend the kind of money that 4K costs just to have really mouth-watering text at effectively 1080p, but doubled? And my feeling was that probably customers would say, £150 for a nice 1080p with an IPS panel, great deal. £350, £400 for a 4K screen for effectively the same usable amount of desktop but with really mouth-wateringly beautiful fonts, not quite such a good deal. So what we've done is brought the 34-inch 3440 by 1440 display, which is just jaw-droppingly beautiful as it is, but everything is entirely readable at that resolution on a normal desktop. So, to my mind, having tried the different panels, the one that I could actually work with was the 3440 1440 screen, so that's what I brought to demonstrate. And although those screens are expensive, the way I tend to like to put it is that when you bought your RISC PC all those years ago, you spent £1,500 just on the box of tricks for a RISC PC. You probably spent more, but that was the basic cost of your RISC PC. For less money, only by a little bit, but less money, we can supply the ARM-X6 fully tricked out with all the bigger SSD, extra backup drives, wireless keyboard mouse, all the trimmings, and basically the best monitor you can buy for what you paid for a RISC PC. And to me that seems actually quite rational. Just buying the monitor on its own, the monitor costs the wrong side of £500. That's harder to swallow. But as a package, I think, certainly to my mind, it represents quite an excellent setup. And the beauty with that kind of resolution is that effectively what you're getting for that money is not really just one monitor, but it's what you would normally have to, to get that amount of real estate on your desktop, you would normally have to buy 2 monitors. So it's effectively the equivalent to 2 quite expensive IPS panels sat side by side. But instead of having 2 monitors with a bezel down the middle, so that if things open in the middle, you're looking at effectively sort of an error box split across 2 monitors with a bezel down the middle. You've got one big, beautiful display, so things that open in the centre of the screen, which is quite a lot of programs, comes nicely, beautifully in the centre of your big display. So it works much more practically as one big RISC OS display. So that's what we've chosen to demonstrate at the show. We also have some of the slightly smaller ones. So if we look back to the menu, we also have one of the 2560 by 1440 ones, which runs full 60 Hertz. Again, that's something only ARM-X6 is capable of doing. We also have some of the standard 1920, 1920 by 1200, 1920 by 1080. And all of the screens that we're selling at the show are what we call IPS panels, which are basically top of the line panels. So basically, although the prices, as I say, start from £150, which I think is quite reasonable, you're getting an absolute top of the line display at each price point. Again, this is because having tried the 4K I evaluated, had a mid-tier so-called PVA panel in it, and quite frankly I could not calibrate that satisfactorily to give me the picture that I really wanted. So again, the attitude is, if we're going to sell something, we're going to sell you something that's good, because if we can't satisfy ourselves, then why are we selling it to you? So basically what we're offering is the ARM-X6 computers, and we're offering high quality displays at a variety of resolutions and price points to match. Now, one of the things that we've been particularly pleased about with the ARM-X6 over the last 12 months is its reliability. I banged this drum when I announced the machine last year. The machines that I mentioned last year at the show, which were going into business customers to run as servers, have been running 24/7 every day since I told you about it last year. The customers have bought more units because they've been so satisfied. They've described it as infinitely more reliable than the Ionixes and things that went before. And in those 12 months, the machines have probably been power cycled sort of maybe half a dozen times, only just so that they can install the new versions of the operating system. So we've been very happy with the reliability of ARM-X6. From a supplier's perspective, we haven't had RMAs and things, no returns and the problems that we've had to address. I think we had one person who was a bit concerned about his solid state disk, so I sent him a new one. He sent his old one back, and I've been using that in my own machine ever since, so there's obviously nothing wrong with it, but hey. So that's really the only problems we've had with the ARM-X6 as a system. And so I think we've absolutely nailed the reliability and robustness that people wanted from it. And obviously that's using our SATA technology, serial A technology that we showed last year. We've developed it further over the year, improved performance and device compatibility over the year. And as I say, it's worked absolutely rock solid, which is exactly what you would want and expect from a main system. So I think the work that has been done both before last year's show and ongoing through this year has allowed us to deliver absolutely on our promise to deliver the next generation of complete RISC OS computer system. And I think that's what RMX6 is really all about. Previously, and even these days, you're always making compromises. So, you know, you might get a fast processor, but you'll have, I don't know, USB, Ethernet, and sort of low video outputs. Or maybe you'll get, I don't know, different combinations of good and bad features. With RMX6, we've delivered a fast processor, we've delivered SATA high-performance disk storage, we provided hardware Ethernet running at 1 gigabit, so that's using a dedicated controller for maximum performance. You've seen the graphics up to 4K in resolution. Even the USB is faster than any of the other RISC OS USB systems we've seen for some reason. I don't know why, but I've been demonstrating stuff. This 128 SSD is my own work machine SSD that I've been using to demonstrate things. And I've connected that in via a USB connection just for ease, because we're expecting to sell the demo machine. And quite frankly, you'd be hard pressed to tell much of a difference between using a lot of the demo applications and even sort of big pictures and things like that off the USB SSD. In fact, I was able to transfer, I think, close to 10 gig of data to my colleague's machine last night via the USB link. And quite literally, it only took a couple of minutes to transfer sort of 10 gig or so over a USB, which, if you've used USB stuff on RISC OS machines before, you'll know that that kind of performance is not normally what you would associate with RISC OS and USB. So RMX6 delivers the all-round solution at what we feel is a fair price with a complete and reliable system. Over the year, we have also, as I say, been working on the operating system to develop it forwards. So we have done 4 major operating system upgrades, each one bringing with it brand new functionality like the 4K capability, serial port, and various other things. The latest one was specialising in making use of the 2 gig of RAM more efficiently and effectively, so that previously you could use the 2 gig of RAM, but if you had certain applications running, then they might sort of block other applications from making use of things. With the new operating system upgrade, memory is now pooled, as it's called, which allows much more effective use of the 2 gig of RAM. So if you want to have a big RAM disk, for example, you can do so without poisoning the rest of the memory space. So the 2 gig of RAM now is far more practical. We would actually expect users to run with a sort of 250 gig or sort of 250 megabyte or 500 megabyte RAM disk, just as a matter of course now, because hey, with 2 gig of RAM, you can do that and still have loads and loads of RAM left. You can run a sort of your average RISC OS applications and that, and still have, you know, I don't know, 1200, 1300 megs of free RAM. So why not have big RAM disks and things? And that's been rolled out with our upgrading software over the year via our download site. We've also just issued what we call Super Pack 4, which is a big update that adds, I think it's nearly 300 odd megabytes of software improvements to the disk image. A big note there is a move to finally exploiting the hardware floating point that is present in the RMX6. So now key software side applications like PDF rendering, video, audio, playback, things like that are now hardware accelerated through hardware floating point, which gives both a performance boost and a sort of sense of relief at finally being able to exploit the technology that is present in the RMX6. And indeed, we'll actually also be rolling some of this technology out for our pre-existing RMini and RMini X customers. Just sort of in the last few days before the show, we also issued another operating system update for our original RMini X customers. So we haven't forgotten our previous generation customers, even though obviously our focus is on the RMX6. So it's been a busy year, and the product just seems to get better and better with each iteration of both software and operating system, and obviously we're continuing to develop further both on the industrial commercial side and with the and features that are relevant to desktop RISC OS users. So I left John, who's the main there's several key programmers on ARMX6, but John's project lead, and he's been working on something called SPI, which is a industrial communication protocol, which ARMX6 supports, and I think Raspberry Pi also does. So he's been implementing that for RISC OS for some of our business customers. Meanwhile, we are looking into, well, as I say, I don't normally talk about, I won't talk about unreleased features because that's not fair. So suffice to say that one of our other programmers is working on another major feature that I think will be of interest to quite a few people when it gets completed. But as I say, I would rather talk about what we're doing right now rather than what's coming, because I'm keen to stress the product that we are selling so that you know that the features that you buy, every single feature that I talk about, is rock solid and works as promised. So yeah, that's the ARMX6. We have 1 or 2 machines available to buy. You can play with them on the stand. I think with the exception of one RISC, all of our machines now are ARMX6s. And if you go around the hall, you'll probably see a whole load of ARMX6s on developer stands as well, because one thing we're very pleased by is the number of developers who have purchased ARMX6 systems for their development side of things. So I think they're appreciating the speed and performance and reliability of having a next generation replacement for older machines like Ionix's. So yeah. But we haven't just been doing machines this year. It's, as I say, it's been quite a busy time. So as well as new computers, we have also been doing new software. So if we look in the show demo folder, we have, if we go to ARComp, we have the Fireworks 2 software is our big show release. Fireworks 2 has been a huge upgrade over the original program. The changelog is, I think, 11 or 12 pages of A4 when I printed it out. And that's just the bullet point changes, let alone everything you don't sort of have time to document. The big headline feature of Fireworks Pro 2 is the ability to save files in Microsoft Excel format. Previously you could load Excel files, but you couldn't save them. Now it's a two-way process, so if somebody sends you an Excel sheet, you can work on it and then save the Excel and send it back to them, and it will obviously retain all the formulas and things. And any formulas that you use on the RISC OS end are now open document compliant, which means that the formulas that you use and the functions that you use on RISC OS will map to the correct functions in Excel or LibreOffice or whatever program people in the outside world are using. Now that may not sound that significant, but latest version has over 100 additional functions in it, which is quite a lot of, sort of, I think it's probably sort of maybe 50% more functions than the previous editions. So it's quite a major step forwards in that. And being able to work on a spreadsheet on RISC OS and then have that same document usable with all the formulas and things on another platform is a significant step forwards in terms of RISC OS being a tool that can be used in the real world. Similarly, on the word processor side, the emphasis has been on improving the rich text RTF importing and exporting in the word processing side. Also, on the importing of Excel spreadsheets, we now support a lot more cosmetic stuff, and there's also been work on multi-sheet Excel documents. So, if I loaded it up, no, I haven't loaded it yet. And I think it's in examples. I forget which one is the best one. I think it's this one called sample. It's the most interesting one. Okay. Now, at first it doesn't look all that exciting because the first opening sheet, to be fair, it's best seen on a bigger monitor, to be brutally honest, because it's quite a big spreadsheet. But you can immediately see that there's large text in bold, in big print, bold, ordinary text, colours, and so on and so forth. All the cosmetic elements of a spreadsheet are now preserved within the import. But if I start to move this window out of the way, you will see that we also have a second sheet, and a third, and a fourth, and a fifth, and a sixth, and a seventh, and so on. And these are all the different workbook pages that you would have had in your Excel workbook. In Excel they appear as tabs across the bottom of the document. The point is that multi-sheet, multi-layered spreadsheets will now import correctly into Fireworks, and you can see that the data is preserved and the sheets are loaded correctly. I shall quit it to load, clear the sheets, because there are literally 20 or 30 sub-sheets in that example file. But the thing to take away from it is that it all imported correctly and quickly. So although this was a very complicated spreadsheet, it's actually given as a sample sort of to test Excel type products. You can see that Fireworks is handling that, which goes a long way to showing Fireworks' ability to be the cross-platform program that we want it to be. There's also improvements to things like mail merge. You can now see exactly what's going to be merged and where, and do previews and all sorts of things. There is improvements to the actual user interface. The program now develops on an ARMX6, so there are some ARMX6 enhancements. It also uses modern fonts, there are Unicode, all sorts of goody stuff. So it's a significant expansion of a much-loved program, and you can buy that on CD-ROM today. We've also included PDF export, so you can go straight out of your Fireworks document and make PDF files for the rest of the world as well. So that's Fireworks Pro 2. The other big release, which I can't really demonstrate because no internet connection, is NetFetch 4. Many of you will be familiar with the so-called zero-page protection work that RISC OS Open have been doing over the summer, which has caused a certain amount of hair-pulling for developers, where code that used to work quite happily no longer works quite as happily as it used to. So we've obviously had a fair bit of updating to do. In most cases we've given the bits away for free, but in the case of NetFetch, there has been quite a lot of different areas need working on. So what we decided to do was, rather than just sort of do a free upgrade on NetFetch, we would actually go and spend a little bit more time and produce a proper full-sized upgrade for the NetFetch. So things like Safe Store and HTML, things we issue free upgrades for the zero page. But NetFetch, we decided that we would actually go to town and actually do a NetFetch 4, because it's been a while since the last chargeable upgrade. I think the last time we actually asked for any money for NetFetch was either 2008 or 2009, so it's at least 6 years ago. So I think we decided that it was probably a good time to actually do another upgrade on NetFetch. So the new NetFetch is faster and smoother. It has improvements to some of the SSL stuff. It has better spam filtering, improvements to sort of view email on server, Unicode support. Fireworks has some Unicode support as well, so everything seems to have Unicode support these days. Various expansions on NetFetch, and obviously then we should build on that going forwards. We've adjusted NetFetch to do more sort of background spooling of data, so the whole experience is smoother, and as I say, the zero-page issues have been resolved. The zero-page stuff has actually been quite a frustration over the summer, because a number of our programs which work quite happily on the older operating systems started exhibiting issues due to the zero-page. So it's been quite an expensive summer, where we've been, because a lot of our software is not just developed by us, but we pay programmers to develop software as well, so it's been quite expensive getting these updates done. So that was why we had to sort of have at least one chargeable upgrade to help fund the ongoing development. But I think the extra stuff in the NetFetch is well worth it. And since we were doing a CD version, I took the opportunity to put a few interesting things on the CD. So for example, you'll find things like the Otter browser, which is a new JavaScript-capable web browser that's been ported to RISC OS. If you've got a fast enough computer, Otter browser, again I can't really show it because there's no internet connection, but basically Otter browser gives you quite a usable, it takes a few seconds to load, but once it's running it's quite decent JavaScript compliant web browser. It looks a bit odd because of being a ported program. I suspect that will improve over time, but the fact is you've got a web browser that will actually do JavaScript and access the kind of sites that can cause problems for things like NetSurf. So we decided to put that on the CD alongside various other things. Indeed, the CD version of NetFetch is designed to be a bit of an internet suite, so there's a version of Messenger Pro on there as well, and a few other sort of bits and pieces. So that effectively for a new user for £30 you're getting email, web, fetching, the whole kit and caboodle. I think that's quite a nice experience. Whereas for existing users you pay the £15 upgrade and you get all the stuff I've been talking about. We've also done a new version of our PiPHI wireless system, which basically allows you to take a Raspberry Pi that you might have sitting in a drawer somewhere, plug in the PiPHI disk and a USB wireless adapter, and then use the Pi to provide wireless facilities to any computer that you have connected to your network. So for example, let's say you have a wireless router in your hallway, and you have a network of PCs and RISC OS machines and things in your study. Rather than having to each have its own Wi-Fi connection, you can take your Raspberry Pi, plug in PiPHI, etc., plug that into your network switch, and your whole network suddenly, including the RISC OS machines, is Wi-Fi connected to your hallway. You can also use it with a single machine and just hook it literally onto the back of, let's say, anything, ARMX6, Ionics, whatever you like, to give you Wi-Fi facilities. The latest version of PiPHI includes the ability to memorize multiple different Wi-Fi networks, so if you're taking things from place to place, it will remember the networks that you've previously used and automatically reconnect you. It will also test the connection, do speed tests, check that you can sort of access different websites so that it can check the reliability of the connection, and it also boosts the Wi-Fi performance, especially with some of the cheaper, slightly, shall we say, cheaper nasty Wi-Fi adapters that you can get sort of on eBay and Amazon and things. So you can buy one of these sort of very, very cheap Wi-Fi USB things. By very, very cheap I mean sort of a handful of pounds, and still get decent Wi-Fi performance with PiPHI. In fact, I believe better than you would get with the normal Raspbian distribution that you would get with the Raspberry Pi, because the programmer has sort of pulled in different bits from different repositories and sort of basically tried to produce a best of breed Wi-Fi, because that's the key functionality of PiPHI. And so the idea basically was that a lot of people have bought Raspberry Pis and have them lying around because, hey, whilst they're fun to play with, you don't necessarily, once the novelty's worn off, they tend to live in a drawer. And this actually turns them into a very practical tool that can actually help your home network. So yes, I think probably the best thing to do at, I'm just trying to rattle through all our press releases because there were a lot of press releases. One last thing, our Delegate deletion and system protection software, big new release of that, now allows you to set up and manage what we call remote bins on other machines. So for example, let's say you delete something from a network drive, instead of it being either ignored or moved across your network at sort of painful lengths of time into the master bin on your computer, you can have a remote bin on the remote drive, and Delegate will just store the deleted information in the remote bin. This is a feature I haven't seen on any other platform, but it basically means that you effectively extend the deletion protection that Delegate gives you to any other drive in your on your network or within your computer, USB sticks, at no performance hit. So that basically means that so you accidentally delete something off a shared network drive. On most computers, that's it, it's gone. If you've got Delegate installed, with no performance impact, boom, it's just stores it in the remote bin so that you can fish it out just through the standard user interface for recovery. So basically it's extending the protection to not just your own computer but also networked computers that you access from your RISC OS machine, which I think is a very useful improvement. And we've improved compatibility with all the different generations of computer. That's a free upgrade to anybody who's bought it, available now on Blink Store. And otherwise, if you haven't already bought Delegate, I strongly recommend it. It's only £15, but it saved my bacon more than once. And certainly as we all get older, these sort of deletion mistakes do tend to happen rather more frequently than they did when we were younger. So for 15 quid, I would strongly recommend that. Or alternatively, we do a CD called Blink Store Collection, which is basically all of our downloadable software from the last 12 months. So we've done quite a number of downloadable-only software releases this in the last 12 months. We've had quite a few people say, oh well, I don't really get on with buying things on the internet. The Blink Store Collection gives you Delegate, it gives you Delegate 5, you get Win Programmer Suite, a set of I think over 100 typefaces and utilities. Chartwell graphing software suite, the DP graphs, and a whole bunch of other stuff. This is again quite a full CD of goodies, and that CD costs £25. So for a small extra outlay on top of an ordinary Delegate, you're getting a whole load of software. It's about £60 of software. So if you haven't already invested in Delegate, then that might be the way to get it because you get so much extra for a small extra outlay. So yeah, I think at that point I'm going to turn it over to questions. Is there anything that's crossed anybody's mind, or that you'd like me to talk about, or compare and contrast, or anything? Yes.
One thing that you can remind me if I've misremembered. I'm getting old as well. When the X6 first came out,
yeah,
for reliability, etc., it was restricted to the processor. Is it still restricted with your updates, or is it now running at full speed?
Yes, I think that you are absolutely right. I'd actually forgotten that, to be honest with you. Yes, when we first announced it, I think we were running at sort of 20 to 30% under what we should have been doing and it was still outpacing everything. Yeah, we did sort of between then and Christmas. But by the time we launched, we'd unlocked the full clock speed. But one of the things that we have seen is that clock speed is really a bit of an artificial measurement of things. So yes, we did unlock the extra 30% performance there, which is why it sort of flies by. I don't know whether this will work particularly well, but if I go to, I'll even run this off the USB, so you see what I mean by the USB speed. Where are we? Show demos. I think it's on the Hammock on that. Backdrops. So this is basically big JPEGs, although I wanted to show the full screen, so full screen. You can't really see because these are backdrops designed for the full giant monitor, but basically it's doing these giant JPEGs in real time. So I just click through, and these are whopping. They fill the monitor that we've got next door. They are giant pictures, and you can see it's just doing it basically. So yeah, we unlocked the extra performance, but what we found, as I say, is that whilst clock speed is clock speed, even through the year the performance has been boosted every operating system update that we've done, because so much is, it can be unlocked by unlocking more of the hardware. So I've talked about things like the hardware floating point and things like that. But also just sort of improving the way software works within RISC OS and removing bottlenecks and improving things. So one of the things that we've been doing over the last 12 months, so some people have said, oh, but you keep the ARM-X6 source code private. Well, actually, we've been many of the RISC OS open improvements that you've seen across all the platforms this last 12 months have been basically as a result of work that we fed back from ARM-X6. So for example, the graphics work that I talked about has led to software pointers for Raspberry Pi, for example, at higher resolutions. I mean, Raspberry Pi still can't only do sort of about half what ARM-X6 does. But nevertheless, I think last year somebody had a Raspberry Pi running at 4K but at a very, very low refresh rate. Okay, the gentleman puts his hand up at the air. At the time you couldn't actually see the pointer any more than probably about postage stamp in the middle of the screen because of the way pointer handling was done. All of that's been fed back from ARMX6 into the main source tree. So your Raspberry Pi connected to your 4K monitor, let's say a very low refresh rate, but you would actually now be able to see the pointer to the edges on those machines. So the progress that we've made with ARMX6 does feed back. And as I say, we've unlocked more and more performance each time and boosted and boosted. Indeed, we are actually beginning to feed back the proprietary stuff into the source tree now. So although ARMX6 has been totally proprietary in a sense over the year without this, as I said, we've been feeding things back, but now all the rest of it has started to go back as well. So we are committed to the work that RISC OS Open are doing and partnering with them and things. Okay, yes, Jen.
You briefly mentioned audio when you're talking about floating point. What sort of audio capability has that got?
Well, I mean, basically, yeah. The ARMX6 has basically very, very high quality analog audio capabilities. USB audio is coming into RISC OS at the moment. The board is capable of digital audio output, although we haven't done that yet. I can say, as I said, I wasn't talking about stuff that we hadn't already done, but I can say, it probably gives the game away that one of the things that we are actually working on at the moment relates to digital audio on RISC OS. So I won't say any more than that, but that is something that is active. People have been very impressed with the quality of audio that they've been getting out of things like Music Man, etc. with ARMX6, and quite a few people who bought ARMX6 bought Music Man to run on it, so that probably tells you something about the quality of the audio. As I say, with the floating point, for example, if you're doing things like Music Man and you wanted to use something like Lane, which is an MP3 converter that traditionally is very slow, we include the Music Man A hardware floating point version of Lane, which is dramatically faster than the software version. So all of that is possible on ARMX6 and extremely usable, etc. Yep.
You presented us with a superb computer.
Yep.
There's still two big holes in RISC OS.
Yep.
You've already mentioned one of them.
Browser.
the browser.
Yeah.
I was interested to notice that you had on your laptop, you had a Firefox line. I presume that's still the old Firefox.
Yeah, I mean,
thing.
I have had, over the year, I must admit, last time I tried it about 10 days ago, I didn't have much luck with it, but during the year I have had Firefox running quite happily on the ARMX6. And I know that John, who was the programmer that I mentioned previously, was actually looking into doing some work on Firefox, but to be honest with you, the Otter browser stuff probably is a much more practical way forwards, because the problem with the Firefox port is it's a very old Firefox port, and to make it compatible with the new Firefox port, it's not quite start from scratch, but it more or less is, because they've moved their engine on at least, I think, twice, if not 3 times since Firefox 2, whereas okay, I'll give you a bit of background on Otter Browser because it's probably quite interesting to folks. Otter Browser stems from something called WebKit. WebKit is what powers Chrome, and it powers Safari, and it even powers Microsoft's latest web browser. So it's the big cheese in web browsers, basically. And it's an open source backend, and you build your own front end on top of WebKit. Now, Otter Browser isn't just WebKit. WebKit slots into something called Qt, pronounced Qt. Qt has been around for ages as a cross-platform development thing. So basically, if you write something using the Qt libraries, you can produce a Windows version, a Linux version, a Macintosh version. Indeed, that's how we do them. We've got Messenger Pro for Windows, Linux, Mac. That's based on Qt. Now, the genius bit is that somebody has managed to port Qt to RISC OS. And as part of Qt has always had ability to, well, I say always, sort of from about Qt off, probably 3 onwards or something, has had, and they're on Qt 5, has had the ability to render HTML, because being able to do HTML user interface elements is, when you're doing cross-platform, is fairly important. So there has always been an HTML library in Qt. with Qt 5, they basically said, oh, sod it, we'll just put in the whole of WebKit then. So Qt 5, if you have Qt 5 on a platform, you have the entire WebKit browser as part of Qt 5 if you've got a complete Qt 5 port. So basically, as a result of the work porting Qt, effectively WebKit came with it. And then Otter Browser is a Qt front end that goes on top of that uses the Qt. Essentially, somebody's created a user interface in Qt with the browser backend that's in Qt already to make a usable browser, and that's what Otter Browser is. So effectively, you've got the engine from Chrome or something running on RISC OS through the Qt cross-platform libraries, which is why it looks a little bit quirky at the moment. Yeah, that's what Otter Browser is. And because that's WebKit, it's up to the minute. So in terms of actually doing stuff, I think that's a much more sensible way forward than Firefox is, because Firefox you'd be starting from the ground up again. And personally, I prefer Chrome to Firefox anyway, but that's just me.
The second point is printer drivers.
Uniprint, yeah, next question.
Yeah, but I want to throw the PC away.
So do we all, but we just put it under the desk and let it just sit there without a monitor and just do things. I mean, you can run Uniprint under Wine on Linux and Mac, so you don't just have to use the PC. On a RISC OS front, buy a printer that supports network printing. Any half-decent laser or colour laser, plug it in, it just works. I agree that people want to buy sort of £25 printers, but it's basically, sorry, I'm being slightly facetious, but equally, if you want to buy a £25 printer, Uniprint solves it. There's Martin Vertner's Gutenprint. I've not personally used that, but I'm told it does a reasonable job, and as long as you've got a fast enough computer, it works pretty well. As I say, Uniprint solves basically every printing problem, so that's your sort of stop to, I want to buy a £25 printer from Aldi and use it, fine, that does it. If you're serious about quality, you want double-sided printing, you want colour printing, etc., then as I say, almost every half-decent laser, mono laser or colour laser, comes with a network port. We've had LPR network drivers available since the 1990s that still work perfectly well, and so that's how I print. My printer is a brother all-in-one colour network laser fax copier thing. I think it cost me about 200 quid or something. It's possibly expensive compared to a £25 printer, but to give me all of that functionality doesn't seem entirely unreasonable. That just sits and gets the job done. So yeah, it would be nice to use the £25 printers natively, but being realistic, you can plug in most things one way or another with RISC OS these days. So I wouldn't. It's not something that I would say is a major impediment to use these days. The other thing people ask about in line with browser printing is video playback. Omnic 6 ships with decent video playback out of the box, and I guess that's one thing we've improved with the floating point stuff in the latest super pack. I remember when I did the talk at Wakefield earlier this year, I showed a little video of the RMX 6 coming up for the first time. So again, if we go to the USB disk, RMX 6. Again, all these demos are coming off USB, so you see what I mean about the fast USB. I think it's this one. It takes a little while to open. This is actually a MOV file, which is it takes a little while to open it straight away. This is the RMX 6 coming up for the very first time. It's actually a QuickTime video, because John took it with his mobile phone, I think. And you could see it just reaching the start command for the very first time. This is sort of middle stroke early 2014, and you can see him poking at the end there, getting the first list of modules there. And that was a QuickTime video recorded with his mobile phone, which is not something you would normally expect to run happily on RISC OS, but you saw it just running quite happily. At the show, Holland, Big Ben Club show, there was a chap who was doing video things with his Pi, and he had some video clips for the Pi it was sort of showing that if, look, you could almost get smooth video playback if you did MPEG stuff, but if you didn't do MPEG stuff, well, it was sort of taking 2 seconds per frame. So we brought the video over to the ARMX6 and said, let's see. If you say so you're so fast. He thought he'd be doing well if maybe we took, if it's taking 2 seconds per frame. If it took sort of half a second a frame, then that would be dramatically faster than what he was used to. So we said to him, well, we started with the MPEG video that he could. It was jerky on the Pi, so we started with that, and you can see that is entirely smooth. And then we said, well, what about the let's look at this AVI version, which is thinking in the MPEG-4 format. See what the actual file name is, and this was basically taking 2 seconds a frame or something. Yeah, it's just recorded from his HTTP. There you are. And again, instead of 2 seconds a frame, you can see totally smooth. Quite happy watching a TV show. I don't know about the content, but so you can see ARMX6 doing that quite happily. He also brought over some videos about the Picano, so you can see whether this is one of them is from 720. Okay, this is the HD video, and you can see that is running. A bit of jerk there, but basically you can actually do HD video on ARMX6. That wouldn't even, it was a complete non-starter for the machine, for basically anything else. And he also brought over a slightly lower resolution version, still quite. And again, his Raspberry Pi was really struggling with this. Again, you can see totally smooth. So there would be audio if we had the audio wired up, but we haven't, so there isn't. So the point is that we have tried to address as much as possible of the issues that the people are having. And obviously one of the things is we're software and hardware, and so I've talked about this many times before, but I think it probably bears saying again. One of the things that we do at ARCOM is that individual projects may not necessarily always pay for themselves, particularly on the software side, but there is always a balance between software and hardware. So there is no point in producing lovely new hardware if you don't have lovely new software. And there's no point producing lovely new software unless you have new hardware. So because we pay, I think we're the only RISC OS company to pay software development anymore, me personally, I fund software development even when I'm losing money on it, because it's important for the platform to have the development occurring. So, the zero pasting over the summer has probably cost me personally £2,000 to £3,000, and at £15 a net fetch upgrade, that's a heck of a lot of net fetch upgrades to cover that. But it has to be done to support the platform, and therefore that's what we do. And so there's a sort of symbiosis between the sales of the hardware, the sales of the software, and everything else all coming together to deliver the enhancements and the steps forward. And obviously what we try to do is then deliver them to as broad a range of people as possible. Although we've just issued the super pack for the ARMX6 just now, my intention is that sort of assuming time permitting, sort of in between now and Christmas, or maybe early in the new year, we will be rolling out some of those improvements to existing Harmony and Harmony X customers. So we're not, again, just looking at ARM and ARMX6 in isolation. It is an ecosystem of the different machines that have led there, and anything that we do in future, Chris?
Are you going to say anything about titanium?
From our perspective, the focus is on ARMX6. There is the titanium board. Since you've asked the question, I will explain. Basically, Rob Schwartzman, who's intimately connected with Rule, came around to both CJE and ourselves last weekend, roughly. I think he was just sort of in Cheshire one day and in Brighton the next. It was quite a thing. So to mention that they were doing this titanium project, so it's basically been dropped on all of us relatively recently. I think he's been restricted by non-disclosures and things. Obviously, we want to partner with Rule as much as possible because Rule are very important to what we do with RISC OS. So we should probably be doing something with titanium. I think the titanium thing is going to end up quite expensive, so it's not going to be a cheap solution. And certainly I know that, say from a video perspective, you can't do what I've just shown you on the ARM-X6 on a titanium, so it's kind of a different product. But it is exciting to see a board that has been designed within the RISC OS community. And as I say, I mean, we shall be supporting them in what they're doing. But I think that in terms of, I've got to be careful what I say because with things not being finished and not being finalised, etc., it's difficult to speak. But I mean, certainly from what I've seen so far, ARM-X6 would still be my preference in terms of an all-round computer. I mean, one of the questions that people have asked me is, if you was designing an ARM-X6 now, would you still pick an ARM-X6? Is that still, surely you would prefer to have like a Cortex A15 or something? And what I say to that is that even now, even with other boards and things available, ARM-X6 still, when you go through all the target features that we wanted, the reliability, the compatibility with existing software, high performance, hardware Ethernet, top-end video, still nothing quite ticks the boxes like ARM-X6 does. So I'm still, of the opinion that if you're replacing an Ionics or an existing RISC OS machine, ARM-X6 is the machine that does that in spades. Titanium is exciting. As I say, likely to be quite pricey, and unfortunately doesn't. I wish these things ticked all the boxes, but
So why is it likely to be pricey?
The board costs nearly as much as an ARM-X6. So
that's the basic
I can't talk too much about that, but it's not a cheap solution, to put it that way. And to be frank, as I say, I mean, with ARM-X6, what we have is the all-round package. You turn the computer on, you're in a desktop. I think somebody said he turned his machine on this morning. It took 8 seconds to a desktop on his setup. I've seen benchmarks for things like the iJet boards and things like that, and they're taking 45 to 50 to 60 seconds, and they're then saying that that's the fastest machine. It makes me a little bit confused. So I think benchmarks can prove anything, and quite frankly, I think the ARM-X6 for most people is going to deliver them the package that is going to be really good. I think Titan or Titanium is going to be a nice project, as I say, expensive, and well, from what I've seen so far, and as I say, take this on the basis of very limited thing. I think we're going to need to do quite a lot more software development on that to deliver anything like what people would actually expect as being acceptable. As I say, I understand that I don't want to say things and put stand on people's foot. I also don't want to send the wrong message and say that we're not excited by it, because any RISC OS development is exciting and we want to be part of whatever people are doing. But from what I saw, more development required to reach what we're already shipping with on ARM-X6. Yeah, exciting, but cautious, yes. And back to robustness, reliability, etc. Again, things like SATA. SATA is at the heart of every modern computer. I don't know how many of you ever experienced the A9. I don't mean to badmouth somebody else's product, but the A9 was technologically quite a nice little machine. It wasn't, its processor wasn't as fast as an Ionics, but it was a nice little machine. But we kept getting telephone calls from people complaining about Messenger Pro on it. Now, Messenger Pro is extremely robust and reliable on basically everything. Ranging from Virtual Acorn to Ionics to RISC PC to you name it, ARM-X6. But people kept ringing up and saying that their hard disks were corrupted when they were using Messenger Pro. Now, we scratched our heads and looked at the code and thought, well, why has no other machine experienced any disk corruption? And of course what it turned out was that nothing to do with Messenger Pro, but Messenger Pro was the program that did the most disk activity because it's a big disk database of all your emails, so people had gigabytes and gigabytes of email. But Messenger was the only program that hammered the disk thing, and of course it showed up problems with the disk I/O. This is why when we did the SATA on ARMX6, we did thousands and thousands of man-hours of bashing and bumping and you name it, to make sure that it was absolutely bulletproof. And so it's proved. And that was basically a prerequisite for our business customers, because they weren't going to put out something that was going to be in any way unreliable. So, you know, with ARMX6 we now have a track record of 12 months on the market of total reliability. And from my mind, if you're looking to replace an existing machine, those are the kind of things that are quite important to you. You want a system that you can turn on, transfer your data to, and just use, and it all just works. And that's what ARMX6 does. In my opinion, some of these more bleeding edge solutions, they are exciting for the future, but until they've got that level of reliability in them, they aren't going to be your main RISC OS computer, or something that won't be my RISC OS computer, if you put it that way. And so that would be my take on that. I don't know how that fits with your experiences, Chris. Okay, so, yeah.
Andrew, can I ask you a question about the software? The older type of software tended to be contained within itself. More modern software, some of the programs bought from you, when you put them in, they tend to alter things in the boot file. So the boot file gradually increases in size as you load more, as you have more software applications on your computer. I found real problems with loading a bit of software, it alters the boot file, and then something else won't work. Now, I don't know if I'm alone on this, but for instance,
that's not normal. Loading, give me a practical example.
Yeah. Two practical examples. PDF suite loaded onto RISC PC, Strong Ed wouldn't then work. Messenger Pro loaded onto an R Mini, the Ovation Pro spell check will not then work. And because it's altering the boot file, there's nothing you can, that's it, the boot file is altered, okay. And the other bit of software doesn't work.
Taking the second example, I know exactly what you're talking about with the spell check problem. That's actually nothing to do with the boot file whatsoever. It's the Messenger Pro spell check module inside Messenger Pro. So it's simply the fact if Messenger and Ovation both use the same spell check system. The Messenger version is slightly more recent, so you basically, I forget which way around it is, but if you load one before the other or vice versa, you need to have the latest version, but it's nothing to do with the boot sequence whatsoever.
Well, I'm pretty sure I tried Ovation Pro without Messenger being loaded at all.
I'm just telling you that's what the problem is. So
okay.
I do know that because I actually commissioned the spell checker module that we use, so I know exactly where that's the common link. So that's what that is. The problem you mentioned about RISC PC and Strong Ed, that one is completely new to me. I would suggest that probably the RISC PC hadn't been updated properly with the appropriate boot sequence things over the years. I mean, the problem with RISC PCs is that they are extremely old, and if you haven't maintained your RISC PC just so, then when you install more modern software onto the RISC PC, you can get sort of somewhat odd results. That would be one I would take privately. We don't modify anything that's shared, generally speaking, so things like going to boot choices or boot resources. I've heard people complain about NewsDIR from Messenger being in boot resources, but that's because you need somewhere that is seen by the computer when you turn on so that it can be found. You could locate it wherever you like, but then you have to actually tell it where it is. We use boot resources because that's where things like that normally live. In a sense, the boot sequence on RISC OS is equivalent to the combination of both the Windows folder on Windows and also the user settings folders on Windows. So effectively, Pling Boot is doing a double-headed job compared to sort of folders on Windows, and is serving those kind of roles. So it's not really surprising that it does grow and become quite big.
Wouldn't it be better if there was two files then?
Sorry?
Wouldn't it be better if it was two separated?
Well, in that case, you would probably want to take that up with either Rule or Acon, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
You can't communicate with it. It is decisions that were made back in RISC OS 3.5, 3.6, unfortunately. Now, can we change that? possibly, but it would have to be something that was an OS-wide initiative. I don't think it's something that we would want to start messing with on our own, because a lot of people, I mean, I agree with what you're saying in principle, but then there's going to be somebody else who's going to stand up and say, oh, Comba doing something that Rob don't appreciate or don't approve of, and then we're stuck between a rock and a hard place of trying to satisfy both customers and trying to work with the open source community as well. And so it needs to be something that's done, I think, in agreement. It's something that needs to be done together rather than sort of just our comp saying, right, news DIR is going to go in, and everybody has to update their computers to suit our comp. I think there's a level of balance here.
Okay. But you see the point I'm making.
I see the point you're making. I think you've been extremely unlucky, to be perfectly honest with you. And it's not. I wouldn't say it's something that I've had that's commonly reported. Generally speaking, people just install the software and use it. So it probably suggests that something was slightly out to start with, but then.
But that happens.
But that happens, and that's why you buy from a company that will actually provide technical, or try and provide technical support and telephone and email and what have you. That we aim to solve the problems and get you sorted. I hope we have done in the past. I don't know, but
I'm sure. Yeah, definitely.
That's the sort of that's part and parcel with the system, is that we aim to help and support. This gentleman had his hand up. Yes.
Can you import from schema to
Funnily enough, guess what I sent a file off to over the summer to the programmer? Not at this precise point, but we are aware that a number of users want to do that with schemas. So the programmer has an extremely complicated schema file, has looked at it and said, yeah, I reckon I can do something with that. The last email I had from him was sort of along the lines of, so now we've got Fireworks Pro 2 out, schema upgrade? Oh, sorry, is schema compatible? So I said to somebody, I'll be honest with you, my reply was, well, yeah, that would be pretty good. Otherwise, how hard is it to do XLSX? Which is basically the XML-based version of Microsoft Excel file format. And I don't know the answer to that question, he hasn't replied yet. So, depending on which of the two is easier, whether schema import is easier or XLSX is easier, then that will be whatever gets done next. I'm hoping that the sorry to be a bit mean, I'm hoping that the XLSX is easier because that's quite a sexy feature, and I'm hoping that there's a certain amount of compatibility that, although it's XML, I'm hoping it's basically old style Excel just wrapped up in XML rather than bytecode. The binary system that they used previously. If it's not, then it's obviously a big job to do. If it is, then probably the existing Excel importer would just needs to understand the XML, and quite frankly that would be extremely useful to everybody, so it would probably be my first choice feature. On the other hand, if it's the case that that's a huge undertaking, possibly the schema would be easy, in which case the schema gets done next. But suffice to say, the example file that we are working against is 6 megabytes in size, it's a whopper. The idea is if we can do that, we can do anything, but if you have specific examples you'd like to send, then we will be interested in doing that for you. But at present, you'd need to use, I don't know what export options you have of schema. Certainly, if you can go out to something like Lotus 123 or something like that, you can come into Firework. Even the 123 import got enhanced in the latest version as well, so it has extremely good 123 import, so if you can go that route. CSV is another option, but CSV is a problem doesn't obtain formulae, so 123 would be your first choice if there's 123 export from schema. I'd be surprised if there wasn't schema to 123, because 123 is before Excel. 123 was what you used on PC systems for spreadsheets, so most things I think didn't use. I don't know, but schema itself does actually work on the ARMX6 right up until the moment you save the files. It works fine if you run it through Amular, but if you save the files without Amular, the files end up bigger than when you started and then won't open again. Every other feature of it works absolutely perfectly. It was incredibly annoying because I had this customer, he was all set to buy 2 ARMX6s to run his, to do his schemaing. He sent me a sheet and I loaded it and it was insanely fast and he was really pleased, and it was only at the last minute that I thought I better just check that I can save and do all the other things. Drat. So he's ended up with 2 RISC cubes rather than 2 x86s, but that's basically all he runs every day is schema. So at the end of the day, he needed a computer system that ran schema as well as possible, and a decent RISC cube gave basically the same performance, cost a fraction more, but as far as he was concerned, his business needed it, so that was the solution. If he'd gone under Angular, it would have worked, but the problem is that he was dealing with such whopping spreadsheets that it just made it, the performance hit him using Angular made it unwieldy. I mean, on his Ionics, it took him sort of 30 to 40 seconds just to load a spreadsheet. And with Angular, it was taking a minute plus. And quite frankly, he was looking, the purpose of buying the new systems was to get fast results. So had Schema been running natively, he would have had much faster results. And using the RISC cube, he could run the existing software and get sort of a handful of second import times on these big spreadsheets. So that's why he went that route rather than for smaller, ordinary spreadsheets, the schema would work under Angular on the Atomics, and you'd be quite happy. But as I say, these were just ridiculously flipping many times the size of the screen, giant things. Any more questions? Well, okay, we're all done. So thank you for listening.